All right, yet again, welcome back to the channel. I guess this video will be something like bad trading ideas. So this is probably the last video in this little sub-series of algo creation, checking your work using processes like these multi-universe type ideas that I've been showing the last couple of videos. So what we're going to tackle here today would be what I would call the ultimate in self-delusion indicators. Right? So what you're looking at here are trend lines and what I would call wave theory type ideas. These two specifically are the most self-delusional, unfalsifiable piles of nonsense indicators ever devised. This is the equivalent of looking up into the sky and seeing elephants, a giraffe, your friend Rick, and maybe even Colonel Sanders. Who knows? And they look perfectly legitimate, and you can, in your own mind, because you're a shit thinker, we all are by very nature, but you can delude yourself into believing all sorts of stupid shit. And I had mentioned when I briefly talked about this a few videos ago that if you had to program this stuff, you would see it for what it is. And the single biggest problem with both of these two crackpot ideas is you're only looking at it here today, and you are unwilling or unable to look at previous trend lines, where they were, where your trade long or short would have triggered, why. All of that stuff is lost to history when you just sit down and draw trend lines of the past. Doesn't matter. Choose your time frame, choose your look backs. You're going to go back 6 months, a year, 23 years. It just doesn't matter, because previous information, if you aren't logging it, and by logging it I mean you have to build these models so you quantify exactly all the parameters. And when you don't, previous information is lost to history, so there is no way to test this self-deluding nonsense. So what you're looking at here is, of course, the master of self-delusion, real macro, two-tick Nick, never mind about this one, of trend lines and wave theory garbage. So it's this type of stuff where you can look at it and it makes perfect sense to you, but it is absolutely the road to nowhere. So let's take a look at what an actual program entails if you want to reliably and repeatedly draw trend lines. Right? So what you're looking at here is an example of taking an idea and running with it completely, regardless of what goes on, and it stores historical trend lines so you can see what you would have done, and then of course you can continue your self-delusion. Well, I would have done this here and I would have done that there. This is what people that use trend lines and waves do, and their excuse is always, well, we didn't know then, we didn't have that information, but the pattern developed and we had to move the line here. Yeah, of course, I understand. There's not anyone out there that doesn't understand that, but that is exactly why it doesn't work, because it is unfalsifiable, which means it's garbage. I just laugh just too hard at people that use these things. So what you're looking at here is, yet again, I don't know how I got stuck with calling it price, but anyways, I got pigeonholed into that and I just never felt like changing it. The S&P daily for the last 23 years. It's the same data I've been using throughout because it was there. So I have two sets of trend lines, an upper or high or a lower set of trend lines. And let's just go through the parameters. So you can see in the top right here. So the red ones, I have two different high parameters and two different low parameters that we set. So we're seeing solid and dashed red lines, solid and dashed blue lines, because I wanted to show you the difference that you're going to be dealing with if you had to programmatically define this stuff. So we have three variables each. This extra days one, well, let me explain. So first of all, you're going to draw this trend line, you need 2 points at least. And if one develops a third that all three line up, great. Programmatically, it's not likely to, because it's got to be right on. And but you and I, if we were to draw them, we'd fudge it. Don't tell me you wouldn't. So let's just drill in over here. What you're seeing here is you need two lines to make a point. So to make a line, two dots to make a line. Why don't I just continue on my backward speaking? And you'll draw that line. So the first thing you have to do is when you're looking for your first peak is you may start off in a trough, for example. So what the algorithm will do here is use this look ahead value. You see it right here, and it will try to dig itself out of that peak. Now it can't look ahead forever, so you set that parameter. So I just chose 20 days, 20 data points, which in this case is days. So once it wants to draw a line, that first temporary peak, that first point is there, and it will look ahead 20 days. If it sees a higher peak, it will choose that one. That's peak one locked in. Now the trend length is how far are you going to look ahead to find that second point. So in this case, it's 120 days. So it will pick the high peak between the first peak and day 120, and it will draw the line. Now this extra day, that is an extension. That's why you see all these little wicks, right? That's an extension in case you need it to line up. Like take a look at this blue one, just because I happen to see it. So the blue one looks ahead a long ways using this same set one parameters. So you can see this dot here. It looks ahead and it draws from peak to peak, but it extends it. So if you were the type of person that said, well, it's going to go up and then it drops off and then I'm going to get triggered short, something like that. Of course, that's not the way it would work, because these little data points here are below the line. But if you just kept it, you could see it, and if it would break over, you're going to make a short. People look at it like that. So that's why I did that extra days. We'll just extend it as far as we need to. Right, so that's what's going on, and you'll notice it keeps the historical data, the historical trend lines. And if you want a longer look, I just made this chart available to have two different sets of trend lines with different parameters. So you could look ahead a couple thousand days, and you can have this 2,000 day trend length if you want. Most of the time, trend lengths tend to be, well, who knows? Who's to say? You don't really know. That's the problem. But you're starting to understand, if you were to program this, how difficult it would be, because you need at least the first two parameters, at least those two. And these extra days are just to show a wick if you want it. Most programs don't have it. You could ignore it. But it's just variation after variation. I could not conceivably do a multiple worlds situation on this, because look at, you're just looking at two different ones, and look at the lines. Like, let's just back out on this thing. Whoops. Look at this freaking mess. And these dashed ones are this second set. And they don't show up that often because I've got it set 2,000, data points, look ahead, trend length, that type of thing. So it's not going to make more than a couple. And you can see the here and here. Now let's drill in at this while we're sitting here looking at it. This would be the type of thing that people could use for longer time periods. You see this line here, and it looking like this blue one is pretty parallel. But you can start to see the problem here, that this peak didn't line it up to this peak until it dropped. But where was it before? Well, it was up at this peak, and then it would have cut through somewhere here. Yeah, I mean, just the possibilities are literally freaking endless on just a couple trend lines. So you wouldn't even be able to see anything if you did the multiple worlds. And the wave theory bullshit, again, unfalsifiable, is the same problem. It's the exact same problem. So I've got something here I want to show you. So where these extra days might matter. So you can see this trend line here and this trend line, or this point here. So this particular trend line. Again, if I wanted to extend that out an extra couple days, maybe that's the type of thing you use for a break. But it is just self-delusion, because at this point right here, you have this trend line. And then from that point going forward, now you can draw this trend line. So, I mean, again, I just repeating myself, but there's an infinite amount of trend lines you can draw. And remember, when you're here, you don't have any of this data. When you're here, you don't have any of this data. You don't have any future data. So if you're trying to trade, you would have to follow this stuff and make your program trade off of only the data that you have, nothing going forward. So every time you come to one of these charts, people like to look at it like it's brand new. Oh yeah, this, done. Here, that's me washing my hands. But that's not reality. That's why it's just absolute insanity. Take a look at this one, for example. First dot here, second dot here, and I extended it to here. All right, so what if you wanted to extend that further? Well, you just change the extra days, right? So 20, 120, it's the blue solid line. So you're looking at the first set. 20, 120, we have extra days to 90. And it's right here. What if you wanted to extend this to see what would happen? It's all doable. It's all programmatic. So we extra days. So what have we done here? Here, we've just extended it. So yes, it bounced up against this blue trend line for a few times. And then of course it broke down. What are you going to put head and shoulders in here like Two Tick Nick? And then, oh, it broke this trend line. Of course, you didn't know this trend line until here and here. Before it was here to here, so it's over here. So you get what I'm saying. And by the way, I'll just say, I got a little lazy, and I had done trendline work before, and I recognized how difficult it was, and I built it. But now with the increase in popularity of AI, I was being lazy, and I said, AI, here's the parameters. I want you to build this model for me. And the trouble it had. So I'm going to close with this. Anyone that thinks AI is going to somehow take over, you clearly have not used AI enough. It is great. It is a huge time saver when it's looking up information, which is all it does. It doesn't develop new information. It just looks up information and it sees trends, which you can see as well. It's not making any new frontier pushes. It's just making things more efficient. AI banged on this shit trying to get trend lines that went across the top instead of cutting through. And we're not talking the extra days cutting through. I'm just talking the trend line peak 1 to peak 2. And I watched it bang away, and I gave it advice along the way because I could see where it was screwing up. A half an hour into it, by the way, I could have rewritten my actual trendline program in that amount of time, or went to find it in the archives somewhere, which is where it is. I still haven't looked. I finally had to suggest that maybe, since it was screwing up on the second dot, so let's just take this dot to this dot, it was putting it here because it wasn't finding the highest peak, and it was going through data before it should. And I said, hey dummy, how about checking the slope? And then the most ignorant thing happened. It started talking about slope being the best idea as if it just came up with it. So I know it's got nothing to do with trading, but if you're going to try to use AI, yeah, it's going to help. But when it's stuck, you're going to have to know what you're doing. And this AI might still be trying to figure it the fuck out. Had I not introduced maybe the slope. Maybe if you track the slope, you'll finally get it right. And then, it's all up there, proud-chested, sticking out like it was the one that thought of it. No, it didn't. Hammering away till the end of fucking times before I'd figure this shit out. So if you're afraid of AI, don't worry about it. Nothing is happening in your freaking lifetime. It's just going to get more efficient and faster than we ever could be. Beyond that, it is forging zero new frontiers that people knowledgeable in whatever field would do anyways. That's how it knows to do it. It's just copying people, and then it just does things faster and better. But it's still using human-derived algorithms. And don't fear AI. Fear stupid ideas, and they are everywhere. And I'm not going to create here in this video or a further video series this stupid wave theory because it's the same dumb shit as trend lines. It is yet another path to absolutely nowhere. All right, back to the fun in the next video. Enough learning for now. And remember, patreon.com/Koyos Quantitative. I'll do the work for you. We'll see you there.